So, episode 3, take 2. Sorry about that, guys. Uh, Technology didn't let me know that the Facebook link live wasn't working until after we went live. And so we had to restart from the beginning. So I do apologize for anybody who was here right at 11 o'clock. We are still going to get going with the interview with Caran, and I'll just read my quick intro out to you again so you know what it is. Today, I'm pleased to introduce you to Caran Jantzen. She is the author of the award-winning book, Grow, Cook, Eat, Share, which is a memoir of Caran's life homesteading in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. The idea of living on a farm, growing my own vegetables, and having a few animals has always appealed to me. It's just always something that spoke to my heart, despite the fact that both my dad and my husband have said, no, you're not getting a horse. So either way, I still would like to live on a piece of property with some land, with some animals and things like that. If you've ever watched the Netflix show Biggest Little Farm, I highly recommend you do. It is amazing. Its photography is incredible, but it's also a really close-up look of the homesteading life for a couple in California. But I do recommend you have Kleenex handy because it is a bit of a tearjerker as well. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to Caran Jantzen. Hello, Caran. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Tanya?
Well, I am good despite technical difficulties.
I know, right?
Technology, it's a love-hate thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I have to tell you, I really loved your book.
Thanks,
I literally dove into it each night just because the stories were so endearing, and the pictures were great. And then the recipes, I was like, oh, look, there's some favorite recipes.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite, I mean, the grape jelly story is just...
Oh, yeah. It brings up emotions even thinking about it.
I can only imagine all of that effort and work, and yeah, I can imagine. But I do recommend people pick up your book. It's available wide. You can get it wherever books are sold. It is a memoir, and it is excellent. It's an excellent read. It'll give you a little insight into the heartfelt and heart-hurting moments of homesteading life, it's a very honest memoir, and I think that you did an excellent job. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted people to see both sides. I think, you mentioned the Big Little Farm, and so beautiful. I always say if you've seen it, then my book is just like a much less flattering version of that. But it's, everything is so beautiful and idealistic, which is lovely to share that side, but the real life side of the not so pretty and the not so perfect is also, I think, important.
Well, it's real. It's true.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work, and it's a constant choice. It's a daily choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's amazing. Although, to be honest, I won't have a farm with animals.
Fair enough. I honestly think having a horse would be a much easier option than what we've chosen to do.
My dad always said, anything that you feed money to,
yes,
not a hobby that will be supported.
Fair enough.
So yes, they were wise, but it still doesn't mean that I don't love horses. And now I'd be happy with goats. They're just adorable, and I can, you got personality, and I love it. So how long have you been living on a homestead?
Well, we moved to our property almost 7 years ago. And it didn't have pasture, it didn't have anything. So we started from the ground up. We started by clearing some trees off the property so that we could plant, the fruit trees and have the garden and have some pastures for our animals. So since we've been here 7 years, I'd say we've had about 5 years of really intentional homesteading. The first 2 were really sort of growing and trying to make things work, getting our garden started, slowly acquiring animals and that sort of thing.
Well, even fruit trees alone, you plant a fruit tree and you've got years before it bears fruit.
Absolutely. We're just starting to reap the benefits of having those trees in the ground.
Wow. So you really have to think long term. Like
Absolutely.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, the idea of homesteading seems idyllic from the outside. From the outside world, the rat race and, people who are, rushing here and there and toting children to soccer and whatnot. It seems idyllic. But for you, what was the motivating factor that nudged you and your family toward this lifestyle?
Yeah, we started out just on a suburban lot, and we had a small garden. And, the idea, we looked into chickens and the idea of all the rules and regulations depending on the neighborhood you live in. So we couldn't have chickens. So that was one little thing that was like, oh, maybe we want something more. But really, we started out as kind of self-proclaimed foodies, like finding local food, finding the freshest food, shopping at farmers markets, that sort of thing. Yeah. It just kind of sparked that idea of, oh, well, if people around us are doing it, local and selling at farmers markets, I wonder if we could do this too. And then have the most local food available to us.
Go get the carrots from the back garden. It's pretty much farm to table.
Yeah.
That's as close as you get.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
That's interesting. And your book is such an honest and beautiful portrayal of both the challenges and the joys that you've experienced along the way. Do you have a specific moment in mind when you realized you were now living the dream that you set out to live?
Definitely. It was when our first 2 goats arrived at our farm. The farmer had done a trip. I can't remember where she was from, but she was driving out to the Fraser Valley anyway. So she brought the goats with us. She pulled up into our driveway. Like, all of our eyes were as wide as saucers. We just couldn't believe that these 2 precious little animals were coming home to be with us. And oh, just the cuddling and the photos and all, like, everything. We just, my daughters and I especially, because they weren't in school yet when we moved here. My boys already were, but we spent hours a day just literally cuddling those goats, like sitting in their pasture, letting them hop and frolic all around us and sometimes on us, and all the time.
The goat yoga is actually for the goats, not for the people.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's kind of equivalent to having more children. You start all over with taking photos of every cute thing that they do. And I can see that. I would get nothing else done but sit and look at goats, which is probably why it seems idyllic to me.
Yeah.
There was a few, I have to be honest, there was a few squeamish moments while leaving.
Yeah.
What was your biggest challenge?
I mean, there were some big challenges, but I have to say that losing animals to predators was probably has been the biggest challenge. You think you're doing everything right. You think you've got the best fencing possible. You've got it set up so that they're protected. Like, it's not just a barn full of 1,000 pigs or 1,000 goats or cows, right? Where it's like, well, if one goes, then we've still got the rest. Like, these are our pets too.
Yeah.
So you try and do everything you can for these beautiful little creatures, and somehow the predator figures a way in or a way around your setup. Their instinct is so strong, their predator instinct, that sometimes there's just nothing you can do. So that was really hard for us, and we experienced it. Like, there's one whole chapter that kind of is like a poetry little ode to the animals we lost. And that was hard to write even. Like, I had tears as I was writing down the names of these animals because they were so precious to us.
I was just bawling while I was reading. And I hadn't met any of these animals, and yet I was still just the circle of life is a very hard thing to sort of wrap the human brain around.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's why we do write. It's why we read. It's,
Mhm.
we try and understand different aspects of that human condition. And
Right.
unfortunately, life and death and predators and prey are a part of it.
Yeah. And I think we're so far removed that, you just don't spend much time thinking about it. And then when you're faced with it head on, it's a bit of a shock to the system. So I'm sure some readers too, like it is a bit shocking just because that's not the lifestyle that we're exposed to. And yet it's so much a part of the natural world. It's ongoing, like you said, like life and death. It's just the cycle. So
And,
it was really
because none of us leave this world unscathed.
Yeah.
Like it affects us all.
Exactly.
You need that ticket punch, like it kind of happens, right?
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't make it any easier, and
No,
that's what I think is it's such a beautiful way to raise children in hard and not like you can schedule that in. It happens when it happens, and you have to adjust. And raising your children with their eyes wide open, there is a huge benefit to that.
Yeah, it's created conversations with our kids that we never knew we needed to have.
Yeah.
And then when something happened, like something positive or negative, it just opened this door of communication with them. And yeah, you can't script that. You can't plan for it all, but for it to just happen so naturally and as a part of the natural cycle of life where it's not forced, and they see it and then you can talk through it. Yeah, it's really a treasure.
And at all stages of their life, as they, because they're going to have different questions at 4 than they will at 14.
That's so true. Although honestly, my 14-year-old wants nothing to do with it right now. There aren't a whole lot of questions there.
It's a totally different line of questioning we're getting into.
4 again.
Yes, yeah. There's a space where you kind of, they're close, but they're not close. Can't win them all.
Yeah.
And what was your greatest joy? Was it the goats? The greatest joy receiving them?
All the babies. There is something so precious about baby animals. So seeing the first goats, I sadly did not actually get to witness any goats being born on our farm. We always showed up and they were either in labor, and then, I'd run back to the house if it was the middle of the night to get an hour or two of sleep or whatever, keep checking on them. And we always missed it. So I know there's other farmers out there that have these amazing videos and they've done Facebook Lives of their goats giving birth. I didn't get that joy, but I got to be a goat midwife and, seeing these brand new little babies and then all the animals, the little chicks that have hatched and our kittens. That's been pretty fun too. So yeah.
Well, and I've been on a farm where chicks were hatching, and it is such a joy to watch because it's like watching a baby take its first breath.
Oh, yeah.
It's so mesmerizing, and they peck their little way out, and just the survival instinct. It's it's strong. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Pretty cool. How many animals do you currently have on the farm? And
yeah, so right now we've got about 50 chickens. A handful of them are fairly freshly hatched, and we've got a couple alarm system geese, we call them, that they warn all of our chickens of any overhead predators. So they're really good at warning. We've got a couple owls that live in our neighborhood, as well as an eagle's nest in our neighbor's tree. And so we're constantly seeing eagles swooping and hawks overhead. And it's really handy to have those geese alert everyone.
I'm like, because your little chickies they'd make one meal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we also have 2 goats. Right now, I'm not breeding my goats anymore, but there are blackberry bush maintenance crew.
Oh, cool.
And then one cute little sheep that's just one of their friends.
Oh, that's kind of cute. Do they literally go in? They don't mind the brambles? They just go into the...
They don't go in right away, but they just devour the leaves. And then as they go, you know, they keep eating the leaves, keep eating the leaves. The plants don't get any chlorophyll. I don't know how it works, but eventually they just kind of kill those branches and then push back a little further. So they're excellent at blackberry maintenance.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for our orchard, the blackberries are constantly trying to take over. And so we've got fencing around each tree, and then the goats just go in there and keep everything clean.
That's pretty cool, because I mean, I don't know if blackberries are something that's native across North America or not. But for those that don't know, it's almost like an invasive species.
Yeah.
A very delicious invasive.
Definitely.
But they do literally grow everywhere. And in our neighborhood, they actually, like, the city comes through with like a great big, kind of like a lawnmower for blackberries, and trims them all back from the edge of the roadways, because they're just, every year they come back without fail. They're very hardy. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you have any special
guests? I do. And they've all, so my little kittens, they were all escaping my basket before, so I had it on my lap, and now they've all fallen asleep. But let's see.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if they'll stay sleeping. Here's, oh no, Brighton.
Hello.
Guy. Let me see if I can get his sisters too. Their claws, they can't retract their claws yet, so
they're always out. Yeah.
Like blackberries on my skin.
It is blackberry season, so
right. Here's her sister, Snow. His sister. This is Mochi. Oh, I'm again.
I know the camera's backward.
Come on, kitty.
Yeah. Hello there.
And then there were 3 in this litter. So it's interesting. This mama was this is the red. His name is Oreo.
Oreo.
Yeah. So here's all 3 of them. You can see them. The mom was just completely feral, like wouldn't even let us touch her, just roamed the neighborhood, whatever. And our kids, our girls especially, just started feeding her and trying to coax her. And then we kind of thought she was pregnant, and she was staying a little closer to our house. And then the girls somehow got her inside with food, like kept bribing her. And right at the end of her pregnancy, we knew she was getting close. We'd watched a bunch of YouTube videos to like check the mom's vitals, the kitten mom's vitals.
YouTube's amazing.
Right? My girls were all over that. And we're like, yeah, let's keep her inside. She'll have her kittens inside. And now she doesn't want to leave. So we're actually just thinking of turning her into a house cat.
So wait a sec, this is the posh life.
Right? Oh, there's food every day that I don't have to hunt for.
This is actually easier. Oh, they're very sweet. Yeah. So will you keep all the kittens?
We are planning to, yeah. At first we thought we would find some homes for them, but our kids are so attached, so we'll get them all fixed, and then they'll be indoor-outdoor kittens.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, a farm without a few cats,
right? You know, they keep the mice away. It's remarkable how much gardens and chickens attract mice and rats. So it's really handy to have some rodent control.
That's an interesting point. You know, I have like a little patio garden, and last summer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Bad. It was really bad last summer.
Yeah.
And I literally came out to the garden one morning, and what was a full head of romaine lettuce had been eaten all the way down, and there was one just straight stalk up the middle, and I was like, oh, okay. So we did a lot of research trying to figure out, like, what have I got, slugs or snails, or what is eating this so quickly? And so my husband actually hooked up a little video, bought a video camera to hook up and to figure out who was eating the garden. Continued on.
Yeah.
And he got it home, charged the battery, and the morning he went to put it up, he lifted the blind, and I kid you not, there is a rat sitting on the edge of the zucchini
Mm,
plot, just happily chowing down. I'm like, well, good thing we invested in that video camera.
right. Oh, yeah.
We just had to catch him in the act.
Yeah. A lot of our tomatoes always have a bite or two taken out of them.
And they don't like tomatoes.
Well, they taste it before they decide for sure.
They literally taste every one and then go, yeah, we really don't like tomatoes. And I'm like, what are you, two?
Yeah, totally.
Because that's so frustrating. Oh my goodness. So I know how much extra time having a garden, a little garden, like a little patio garden, takes from my day. So what time does your day start?
Well, Tanya, I'm not really a morning person, so I don't know that I would thrive on a real farm. I get to call the shots, so my animals get used to eating, at around 8 in the morning. I'm not up at 5 feeding them. Yeah, but I also have little hands to help, and that's been amazing. I could not believe. I remember when my third kid went off to school for the first time, and it was just me and my preschooler left at home, and I thought, oh, now I have no help. Like, I'm going to be so doing this for hours. And I could not believe what a good helper she was. And we call her the chicken whisperer or the animal whisperer because she has a way with animals. And she was also, not quite 2 when we moved here. So it's just, this is her lifeblood. Yeah. She loves it. But she is so incredibly helpful. So, and that's all the kids to varying degrees help out. So even though, it's not super early in the morning, I still have help, which is really nice.
That is nice. Well, that's good to know. You can actually train your animals to what time they get food. Yeah. Good to know.
So if I'm running late and have to rush the kids off to school before I feed them, they are quacking and honking and letting me know like they're not happy. And then when I come
quiet audience
and they're like, okay, it's time to feed us now.
I can understand that. So it's like it's a family chore, which is great. I mean, every household, the children should have chores to do and responsibilities and everything like that. But it's nice to know that they have to get up and get out there and do those things. I think that's a great way. Mm-hmm. And if you're sick or something, you already have a trained little troop to sort of.
Absolutely. And then especially in the early days, we would, if we wanted to get away for a weekend, we'd bribe friends and just say, hey, like you'll get all the eggs. And if there's fresh produce, help yourself. So that usually was all it took to get a volunteer to come by.
Yeah, eggs alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's, oh, for sure. I calculating how much I spend on a weekly basis on free range organic eggs. And I'm like, yeah, that would be a benefit.
Yeah. I know. You didn't have to drive so far. You could come babysit here for a weekend.
I know, right? I'm not even allowed to leave my regional district at the moment. So we're still under COVID restrictions here. And so the latest news was stay as close to your backyard as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we have been so thankful for our backyard this last year.
I bet. And, I think it's just having that grateful heart of wherever you are to have that. And that will get you through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Although I would like mine to be a little bigger like yours.
Fair enough.
So we are in spring, the thick of spring. The pollen count is super high right now. And even for me, who I don't usually have seasonal allergies, I have been suffering like crazy this week.
Oh, that's too bad.
I don't think I've sneezed this much in my life. So I do feel for everybody who has this every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel badly for them. But do you have a favorite season on the homestead?
Spring, hands down, is my favorite. Winter is so hard, especially with animals. Endless, for us on the coast at least, it's endless rain, as well as a bit of snow and cold. And that means mud Animals like mud when it rains. So just slogging through that, trying to keep the water from freezing, being out there and your hands are frigid, but you can't wear bulky gloves because you've got to do things. So yeah.
They still have to be fed and
right. Yeah. I remember the first year we lived here with animals, and it was Christmas morning, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I'm going to be doing this every Christmas morning from here on out. Like, it just didn't dawn on me, right? Like, there are literally no breaks.
There's no break because it's, there's no grabbing that cup of tea and watching kids open presents. It's, well, first we have to feed the animals and
So after, going through the winter season, which is my least favorite season on the farm, then just having, these fresh blossoms start to open and buds start to pop out of tree branches, and you see the rhubarb leaves coming up and all these different signs of spring, like the first dandelion in the field and all the crocuses and daffodils. So it's this like awakening of new life. And it's so filled with hope.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, anticipation for the seasons to come and the joy to come from being on the farm. So definitely, hands down, my favorite season.
Nice. I think it's a good season. I think we do it well here on the West Coast.
Fair enough.
I think a friend of mine who grew up in Ontario says that our spring in the Pacific Northwest is very similar to or equivalent to autumn back east.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I've seen autumn back east a few years ago, and I have to agree. It has just that absolute wonder. And I wonder what it would be like to go into winter having had that beautiful autumn. And I don't know what that would be like, because we kind of blend into from a little bit of rain to a lot of rain to a torrential downpour of rain to a few days of spring where flowers pop up and then it rains.
Yeah.
But it's why it's so beautiful and green as well. So,
exactly.
But I thought that was a really interesting observation. I thought, that makes sense. Spring on the west, autumn on the east.
Yeah,
Hawaii in the middle.
Right. There you go.
So we can work this out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I know I'm way behind in planning the little garden this year. But how early do you start your indoor seedlings? And it's going to make me feel really, really, really bad because I know I'm way behind.
Maybe not, Tanya, actually. So in the past, it's been typically February, March. We're chomping at the bit to get things planted and just like start to see any sign of green and get so excited. We've got a beautiful south-facing window in our living room. So with it's a bit of a bay window, so it's got a nice big edge. So we've always just laid out our seedlings. But we've always also had cats in the house. And I cannot tell you how many times I have come into the living room to find my seedlings that have already sprouted an inch or two just all over the floor. And so homesteading is not about, you do it all. It's not a cookie cutter, like you have to do it all to call yourself a homesteader. So we pick and choose, and we've just chosen not to do seedlings anymore because we love our cats. And we don't have the right setup, and it's just we don't do a whole lot of that anymore. So
so you just buy the plants already.
We've got such a fabulous nursery just down the street from us, and it's a family that runs it and owns it, and they're so lovely. And we don't have any problem just supporting their endeavors by purchasing seedlings. We plant a lot of things directly in the ground as well. So there's that too, but some things just we've come to the conclusion that it's not worth it to try and do absolutely everything.
Yes.
And that's one of the things we have decided not to do ourselves.
Well, I actually feel quite a bit better about that.
Good.
Because I was contemplating going, well, do I plant a garden this year? Because the weather's been a little bit wonky, and we're about to get a lot of rain for the next few weeks. And I'm like, well, I know I don't want to plant those seeds because then they're just going to wash away. So, you know, if all the COVID gardeners have not cleared out the garden stores this year, I will probably buy plants. Just to,
why not? Right?
It's garden season as well. Is the other thing is not 2 months of nurturing something on the windowsill. And that, but I should probably be self-organized.
The other thing we've done is we plant a lot of perennials or a lot of plants that can overwinter as well. So, you know, we've got mustard popping back up in the garden that's self-seeded. Our kale kind of survives the winter here on the coast, and then it's producing little buds of fresh leaves again. So there's ways that we've learned to kind of keep things going or just have them perennials. We have, instead of planting a lot of onions, we have Egyptian walking onions. We've got a whole section that are perennials. So they just keep slowly expanding their bulbs and keep growing, and they can overwinter very lovely here. So that's a different kind of strategy instead of always like the annual and when is it timed right to get it in the ground and not be too rainy or too sunny or that sort of thing.
That's really good to know. And here I take out my kale every year, so I will stop doing that.
And you can. I mean, it'll produce seed the second year because it's a biennial. But if you keep it over winter while you're planting your new kale seedlings, you'll still get some fresh little buds in the meantime before your new kale grows up. Yeah.
Okay. There's when it comes to gardening, there's like you need like a dictionary of how-tos in different regions, growing regions and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
What was your biggest aha moment in the garden?
Plant what you'll eat.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
It's so simple, and I know some people hear that and they'll probably roll their eyes like, of course, that's the most obvious thing. But you know,
it's not though.
You think, oh wow, I can grow this, I'm gonna try. Or oh, look at, there's a new variety of this, I should order those seeds, or on and on and on, right? And half the stuff, it's like when you order a CSA box for the first time, like a veggie box from a farmer, right? That you pick up every week. And you're like, there's all this, who knows what, kohlrabi, let's say, like, what do you do with kohlrabi? I've never eaten it before. And then it sits in your fridge and you're Googling recipes and, you know, like it kind of goes bad and you're like, oh, I guess I can throw it out now, but I didn't know what I was going to do with it anyway, right? So really, like, grow what you'll eat. It's boring. It's not as adventurous as you might like. But if you know you're going to eat it, you know it won't go to waste. All that time and effort you put into it won't go to waste. It won't go rotten in your fridge. There's something to just kind of accepting the limitations of things too, and of life in general, that it's okay to not try all the new things in the garden. So we kind of, now we have a strategy where we say we're going to try one new thing. Like if we see something at the garden center that looks interesting, or we see a seed where there's a new variety and we'll order it, we'll kind of just stick to one a year, because we don't have the space in the garden necessarily to grow all these novelty things either. And we don't know, like, are they going to actually do well in our climate or are they not? Right? It's a little trial and error. So
for sure.
That would be
and stuff. You need some, like cantaloupes need a lot of support because they need a lot of shoots and a lot of pavers around them and things like that. So it does better in California than it does here in BC. So that's, but I do like that, grow what you eat, and it isn't as obvious as you would think, because I have definitely grown several things that I had no intention of eating. And I'm not quite sure who was.
Yeah, if you get joy from growing it or from looking at it, like, there's value to that as well. So I'm not necessarily a flower gardener. Like, I'm like, if you can't eat it, why are you growing it? But there's still value to seeing beautiful things or having the joy of just tending to it. But it's definitely
strategically. so that they
Right.
are like they offend, slugs or snails
Yeah.
or something like that. But
Absolutely.
yeah, and you want to use your space as wisely as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. So we stick to the basics. I mean, we have quite a big patch of garlic because we go through a lot of garlic, and then we'll keep seeds for the following year, or like the cloves become the seeds for the following year. We grow a lot of potatoes, a lot of leafy greens of all kinds, like the hardier mustards and kale and that sort of thing, as well as lettuce in the summer. But we just stick to the basics now, and it's a lot easier that way.
But then you always have it. You can always
Yeah,
run out and grab those, potatoes take forever to go bad. They store really well.
they
So
do so well.
they can be a really easy staple to have. And I mean,
Yeah.
I had an aunt who used to leave the carrots in the ground until
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. But
Yeah.
Thanksgiving in Canada is in October, I should say, and not November. But
True.
that was the time where she pulled out the remainder of her carrots because it was going to a big dinner, and
Yeah.
they were perfectly fine in the ground until, the second week of
Right.
October.
Absolutely. Beets and even a late planting of potatoes is the same. I actually had potatoes in the ground once and harvested them for Christmas dinner.
Nice.
And they were fine. I mean, here the ground isn't frozen, right?
A little bit of digging.
Other parts of the country, but
But that makes complete sense. I mean, you might as well, it's naturally being preserved there. So why
exactly.
not?
Yeah.
So I remember seeing that you are now actually offering life coaching services. I have no idea where you find the time to add an entirely new venture to your already full plate. But can you tell us a little bit about what it means to be a life coach and what that involves?
Definitely. Yeah, just quick background with COVID and being at home, it just seemed like a really good time to jump online and do some online education. So that's what I ended up doing last year. And really, life coaching to me is about partnering with people who are ready to take concrete steps towards change and growth. So people who want to be intentional about improving their personal development or their professional development. I can come alongside and give them some tips and tools and ask really intentional questions that sort of help them to see things from a different perspective than maybe they've been able to see before, and just have a sense of what they want to do and the direction that they want to go. So it's not so much me telling people what they should do or what their options are, even as asking questions that help people to kind of come to those conclusions on their own.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think if you're ready to take a step in a certain direction, having somebody to support you and sort of shorten the gap, I think, between where you are and where you want to be, that's valuable.
Absolutely. Sure. And, I think we don't give the idea of accountability enough credit when we're pursuing our goals. There's something about knowing, even though I don't hold people accountable in the sense of like being really strict about it, just knowing that next time someone's going to see me, I'm going to ask them, hey, how did your goals go since last time we chatted? And it definitely helps. It kind of keeps it in the forefront of your mind then. I remember the first time that I met with a coach through my program, and I just couldn't believe the value. I just thought like, wow, this is so powerful, getting asked these questions that help me think about things I hadn't thought about before. Yeah.
It's so much easier to sort of do a helicopter view of somebody else's place in their life than it is to look inward by yourself, because inward is very biased. So it's always advantageous to sort of have that outside view, that perspective that kind of goes, did you think about doing this? Or and I think it's a great time. And I think life coaching can be advantageous in multiple stages of life. Even when you think about the pandemic and shifting work from an office environment to a home environment, sometimes that involves some strategic analysis of figuring out how do I best work in this new environment.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
and I think brains can sometimes get caught up in ruminating over the negatives, and we forget to kind of step outside of that and just look for the positives. And it's amazing what just shifting your attention to the positive will do. So that's a big one too that I work with clients on, is like, let's just shift to the positive for a second and see what looks different from that perspective.
Absolutely. Because I think wherever your attention falls is kind of what you bring into your life. So having a positive outlook on, or seeing something in a light that is where you can see it as an opportunity instead of an obstacle is a huge skill to be able to bring that into it. Makes life a lot easier. And your head hurts less from banging it against a wall. So.
Right. And like if you're married or you've got a best friend or a partner, like you can bounce ideas off, but like you said earlier, it's still so subjective. So getting that more objective third party where they're not in the situation, they don't feel the feelings the same. It's so helpful to just kind of help you to take a step out and look at it more objectively as well.
Absolutely. I think that's awesome. And is there any, that came out well, is there any particular point in people's life where seeking the guidance of a life coach is the most beneficial?
A lot of times people kind of hit something, a challenge or a speed bump or obstacle in their life where they just don't know how to navigate it. And I think that's a really good starting point. Where you're either forced into a change that you didn't choose, or sometimes you just realize, hey, I need to make a change. Like, I don't like the direction my life is headed. Yes. And so change often is the catalyst that will bring people to a life coach. Wow. And then from there, I say, people that are willing to actually put in the hard work to make those positive changes towards that positive outcome. Yeah, if you're just going to show up but then not do the hard work on your own, it's not as helpful.
Yeah, I think that's where that accountability comes in. I mean, fear is a great motivator as long as it's not paralyzing you. It is a great motivator, because having that, I mean, it's part of the reason why you have an editor. Yeah. There's a deadline and they're waiting for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you don't have that deadline, let me tell you, there are 1,000,001 other things you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Currently doing those. So I'm actually expecting any moment that there will be an email from my editor going, so where are you on that? I'm percolating.
Oh, yeah. I think that's what I need for my writing life, because right now I feel like it's a little bit all over the place, like 100 ideas, but not a lot getting,
And that focus, right, of having one thing to focus on and just work on that. So, So I have popped your website up on the bottom as a scroll there. Transform Your Story. I love that, by the way, transformyourstory.ca. Is that the best way for people to get in touch with you for your coaching services?
Yeah, there's a contact button that they can click and send me a message. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's great. Thanks, Tanya.
Do you have any plans to write more books?
Definitely. But I'm kind of looking at it as a marathon, not a sprint, just in the sense of, you can only do so many things in one day, and it's okay if writing isn't always front and center for me. So right now I'm working on coaching and, growing my client base and connecting that way. And writing is taking a bit of a backseat, but I've still got like a bunch of ideas percolating, and I can't wait to sort of find a little moment in time to tackle that again.
And winter will come around again. And, and then, exactly. There are seasons for everything.
Yeah, so true.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about your coaching that we don't know or won't find on your website?
Yeah, I guess just a couple of areas of focus that I have. I work specifically with, it tends to be women who maybe are caught in that sort of negative ruminating cycle. So I do a lot of mindset coaching. I also coach around emotional intelligence. Like, we know how critical it is that when you're in tune and aware and managing your own emotions, your relationships improve, your communication improves at work as well as at home and in friendships. So that's a really important piece. And then I also work a lot with the Enneagram. And some people are maybe more familiar with that term than others. Essentially, what it is it's a personality assessment that not only sort of diagnoses a personality. You know, there's other assessments that you just like, oh, this is what I am. And then every party, you just pull it out like, oh, I'm an INFP or whatever. But the Enneagram, the idea is that it's based on motivations. So it really gets to the root of why we do the things we do. And that's only a starting point. There's so much growth work that can happen as we start to kind of uncover the layers of our personality and realize that, you know, personality sometimes is a wall that we put up to kind of protect us from the world. It's not only who we are. There's more to us than our personality. So starting to kind of uncover what that looks like and how we can grow as we have that self-discovery. It's really powerful. So it's been a really fun tool to work with others around.
I bet. You know, it's interesting because that's exactly why I write. Because I want to understand why people do the things they do.
Right? Yeah.
And so when I have something that I don't quite understand, I research and I put myself in those situations as a writer to try and figure out why people would behave in a certain, what is that deepest motivation. And I bet dollars to donuts that most writers do that. They are trying to figure out the world around them through the written word. So I think it's a really useful set of knowledge.
Yeah.
So, and probably knowing your own, what personality type you are, is only going to enhance your ability to understand other personality types.
Absolutely. And give empathy and grace to those, right? Like, we're all at different levels of development, different levels of awareness, trying the best we can, right? But sometimes it takes a little bit of an outside perspective, again, like we were talking, that perspective shift, or just that observation of like, oh, have you noticed that you're doing things this way, or there's a habit or a pattern of this behavior? And oh, like you said, like, our personalities are our blind spot, right? We can look at others and see them a little more clearly, but it's been really helpful. I even have worked with an Enneagram coach for my own personality type, just to help me unpack the layers that are going on, you know, in my head a little more.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think the more that we understand ourselves, the more empathy we'll have for others. And I think that's huge. And the more empathy we have, the less fear we will have about our differences. And that goes a long way. That is a ripple effect that will go very deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's excellent. I'm very pleased to hear that you're working through that, and I'm sure I'll be in touch with you more about that as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really did love your memoir, and I lived a little vicariously through you. Since I won't be getting a horse anytime soon. So I'll say thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for staying with us. If you got dropped off on the first one, that didn't quite work. Thanks, technology. And be sure you give us a thumbs up, and feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And until next time, I hope you find yourself immersed in a good book. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks for coming.